the house was on a hill, and the nearest village was something like, I don't know, maybe a mile away or something like that. There were many villages around, but the hill was kind of stood alone. And I remember how coming up that hill, we spoke to Monica at the time. We said, what shall we do if she doesn't accept us? Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe when she invited us, she didn't realize what a terrible danger it means for her. Maybe we shouldn't even come up. Maybe it's terrible imposition. We were terribly tired and almost indifferent. And then, but we moved towards the house, and then we found that she was not there. She was not there. So we were sitting there, I remember, like paralyzed, tired and indifferent, and trying to think out our next step in case she refuses to accept us. And then we, both of us, saw something that I shall never forget. Christina appeared down, beginning to get up the hill, with her little girl holding her hand. And she saw us. When she saw us, she let the hand go, and she started running like this. I'm crying every time I remember it, because I think it was, in a way, it was a very beautiful sight, humanly speaking. It was not only a fantastic relief for us, of course, above all, but also she didn't hesitate a moment. She didn't come up and say, "Oh, girls, you did come," or something. She just went like, and she said, "Well, good you came, we shall manage." And that started 3.5 years together in an atmosphere of friendship and love and respect, bringing up that little girl together. Her husband's old father was there for a part of the time, very old man, old and nasty man, and Christina and ourselves. Now we were completely autarkic, we were completely self-sufficient. None of us had any money. She didn't have any money. She had that house, and we planted some vegetables. We planted some vegetables. We used to go out into the wood to bring wood for fire and hot water, and we planted potatoes. There were some wild fruit around, but we suffered. We were terribly undernourished, of course, and I don't think I think you have to switch off this. We also had one pig. And switch it off.
It will switch itself off.
Yeah, it will stop. And that pig provided the only, I think, protein we had for the whole year.
Yeah.
That means we used to kill that pig. I was the man in that family. I used to kill the pig. I used to work with the horse. We had a horse, and we had a horse and a cow and one pig at a time. And I used to kill that pig. And Christina somehow knew. Christina came from rural background, and she knew how to manage those things. She was a peasant, basically. And we wore her late husband's clothes, and we ate whatever we had, usually potatoes, and from time to time, as a great luxury, we used to bake bread. She had some some flour in store, and sometimes we would somehow bring flour. And but I found there was a huge library. You know what library? The husband's father was the center of Theosophic Society of, Anthroposophic Society of Vilna. So there was, first of all, there was scientific library of her husband. Then there was a classical library of classical works, Polish poetry and so on. But there was a huge library of anthroposophy. And we used to read it. That's how I made my first acquaintance with Rudolf Steiner and all the great anthropological literature. And I tell you how we read. We had, of course, no electricity. We had no fuel except wood. But we had some little wooden planks which are used in building houses, just before you put on what I don't know how you call it, tiach בעברית, I don't know how you call it in English. That means that the final thing that you put on the walls, you put a wooden plank, very thin, very dry wooden planks. So we had, because they intended some time ago, they had intended to enlarge the house, they had a store of those planks. We used to burn those planks. We were three of us sitting at night. The girl would go to sleep, we would sit three. One of us would hold the plank lit here. The other one will hold a little thing to do this, because, of course, it was a wooden house and we were terribly afraid of fire. And the servant would read aloud. And we read that nights. And in the morning, we would get up all black. But we read a lot. And then I read, for instance, while I was working picking potatoes. I remember I would take the book with me, I would put it in front of me, do this, take out the potatoes, then next, and read like this a lot. Henry, if you want to read, I sometimes used to tell my students who said I can't read, we don't have conditions, we don't. I know something about it. How you can read if you really want to read. So we read a lot. We heard that was not very far from the place where they killed Jews, Ponari. Ponari is the name of the wood where bulk of Polish Jews, of Vilna Jews were killed. We heard the salvos. We heard the fire squads working there. We heard that. We also had visits, night visits from all kinds of stray partisans and Russian partisans later on, first Polish partisans who were very dangerous for Jews. If the Polish partisans who were very, very rightist and very anti-Semitic, if they found out that we were there, it would be the end of us. If the Lithuanian or Germans would find out, that would be the end of us and Christina immediately, without any thought. And in between, one day, there came a young man speaking Russian, terrible condition, sick, wounded, dirty, incredibly dirty, hungry, bedraggled in a terrible way, and said he was Russian soldier taken prisoner by the Germans, and he escaped from the train. And he was going around for a long time. He had been going around villages. People would give him some food, but nobody wanted to accept him, to take him in. They took him in. That means Christina took him in. Christina made a council. She said, girls, we have to decide. It's just you and I are in the same position. Shall we take him in? Well, we took him in. He took him in, and he was a more complicated story than we. First of all, he was a man, which is always worse under those conditions, more suspicious, suspect. Second, we had our toilet was outside, not in the house, but outside, like in villages. And when Nikolai had to go to the toilet, first of all, he would wear a little babushka to look like one of us. Second, he would knock. He was given a room on the second floor, a bedroom, and he was sitting there doing all kinds of very useful things. He was an engineering student, and he made for us all kinds of little machines to help us to manage taking care of our vegetables and things like that. He tried to be useful, and he would knock, and then one of us would go out and see whether it's all right, and then we would call Nikolai and said, Nikolai, all clear. Now go with him up to the place, and then Nikolai would knock, and we would walk and look around and say, Nikolai, now you come in. And it was like this. Now from time to time we had those Lithuanian soldiers and German soldiers, and we had to, I was the man in the company. I had to drink with them to make them drunk. But you can imagine a Jewish girl from Vilna drinking. So it was a terrible thing, but I learned it. I really learned it to pretend that I'm drinking, but really not drinking, or drinking a little. Still, when I came here, I had a very funny thing, my hands were peeling. And I came with my boyfriend, who was my husband there already, who was a doctor. And he said, if it weren't you, I would say that it's alcohol poisoning. But of course it's funny. So I said, maybe it's not so funny. That was a very, very poor quality alcohol, which gives that reaction. Of course, I took care of it, no problem. Anyhow, and then we had all kinds of adventures there. And I found a book. Among the books, I told you there were many books in the house, and I found a book about beekeeping in Lithuanian. Now, Lidya, was when we matriculated in Vilna, and then Vilna became Lithuanian. And then I decided I want to study medicine in Lithuanian University. We started medicine in Vilna University, but they closed the university. So I decided to move to Kaunas, the Lithuanian capital, to continue. And I had to go through examination to be accepted in Lithuania. And I went through that examination 3 times, for me, for my sister, and for a friend, 3 times. I learned languages very easily when I was young, very easily. And then I had a hell of a good time. That was before the Germans came in Lithuania, in Kaunas. And why was I telling? That's how I knew some Lithuanian. That's how I knew some Lithuanian. Now, this thick book about beekeeping was in Lithuanian. And my first thought was that I will use this book to take care of these 2 beehives. I have not the slightest idea how to do it. So I started reading it, and then we all thought that we had struck a gold mine. We shall translate this into Polish, and we shall publish it as the first book on beekeeping in Polish after we are freed. And so I worked on this translation and also learned how to. And from the 2 beehives, we made 6 beehives. I really learned the technique. And oh my God, was I stung. It's terrible. But anyhow, I learned the technique, how to do it. We had 6 beehives. Now this beehives were really lifesavers, because honey has a lot of vitamins. And when we were usually springtime after winter, we were terribly undernourished and very weak, and our skin was covered with wounds. And then I would take out the first honey. And I also remember that picture. I remember that exactly. Monica will tell you, no, it wasn't like that. It was different. But I think it was like that. We had a kind of primitive centrifuge machine. And I was doing that, taking out I don't know what the name of the thing is, the whole thing with honey in it, and putting it in the machine and doing this by hand to take the honey, to separate the honey from the wax. And Monica and Christina and the little Hania, her name was Anna in Polish, so we called her Hania, standing there looking so hungry and looking, hopefully to go. And then I would take the first honey, and we all three of us would drink it like soup, like soup. And in a couple of days, our wounds would be gone, and color would come back to our faces. It was life-giving. Besides, we used it as our only currency. Christina very rarely would pack some little jars of honey and go to township and exchange it for some sugar. We needed sugar for the bees. So she would exchange it for some sugar. And in the winter they needed sugar because, it was very hard winter in those. It's northern Poland, very, very cold. Long, cold winter, and she would get some sugar, some salt. I think this is about all we bought. We didn't buy anything else. Sugar for the bees, we didn't need it, we didn't use it, and salt. No soap, we made our own soap out of ash. When this boy, Nikolai, came, we told him to take off his clothes. We warmed up a lot of hot water for him, and he washed and washed and washed. And we gave him Christina's husband's clothes. And I took his old clothes and boiled them in ash. And I remember that afterwards, when we parted, he said, many people give me some food, but nobody but you washed my clothes. He was from Kazakhstan, which is in Asian Republic of former Soviet Russia. Now it's independent. And it's the capital is called Almaty, that means the mother of apples. It's known for its apples. And he would always say Danuta. I was called Danuta. My papers were Danuta, and Monica was Monica. And he would say, when I go home, I will send you the biggest apple in Almaty. But I don't know whether he ever reached home, and I certainly didn't get an apple. Anyhow, his end was like this, not his end, but and with us. Somehow, I think that some of the peasants around, maybe somebody got suspicious, maybe saw him, maybe something. And then Russian partisans started coming. They came anyhow, but they always behaved very decent to us, very decent. They would eat and drink what we gave them. And I remember that they would never lie down on a bed or on a couch or something, because they said, we have lice and we don't want to leave it with you. And they were extremely nostalgic because they saw this little girl and they all had families. They were very gentle with us, very gentle. They never replied any violence or even request. They just got what we gave them. They appreciate the fact that we were friendly. And but they somehow got this sense that he's there, or something maybe told him. Anyhow, they started talking about it to us then, and we of course. And but we spoke with Nikolai, and he said, "I think I have to leave. I think I have to join the partisans." He was such a he didn't want to fight. He was such a simple young boy who wanted to live and not to fight. But he went with them, and then we started getting messages from him. The last message was that he was wounded, he had a leg wounded, and that a helicopter took him somewhere behind the lines. And that was all we knew. That was the last. So then sometimes my sister and I, had to go out and the partisans, to show the way for the partisans to go, they sabotaged the railways and so on. Sometimes we went into the forest when there were too many Germans and Lithuanians. Well, a lot of things like that, but I'll skip that. And then the Russians start moving west, and the Russians moving west, and the Germans retreating. And we had encounters with retreating Germans, which were terrible. Don't want to talk about it. And then we saw no Germans anymore, and we heard they bombed Vilna, and we saw, how you see the fireworks, and we heard it all the time, and we were so. It was the first time when we began to think that maybe we shall survive. Maybe. And I remember that one of my reactions was very funny, you won't believe it. We were sitting there in the garden, taking care of vegetables, and you say preening or whatever, taking out the... And then there was a bombardment of Vilna. And I remember that I said to Monica, maybe we will have a normal life someday. And then I said to her, do you think? And I looked at my hands, which were so coarse and so, coarse because of this very, very hard work. And of course, no cream or whatever. And I said, do you think that one day somebody will kiss that? In Poland, don't forget, they kiss a lady's hands. So it was, here it sounds funny, but in Poland it was customary to kiss the hand of a lady. I remember I said, do you think somebody will kiss that? Anyhow, I don't know if somebody kissed that, but they retreated, and then one day there appeared, the first Russians appeared. This was a group of Cossacks, Cossacks, on little horses. They have those they look like ponies, but they're very, very hard working horses. On little horses, there were maybe 12 or 15 of them, galloping up the hill, and they had their rifles, and they started shooting right into my beehives. Shooting into this was the first meeting with our savers. They started shooting, and the bees started coming out. It was such a terrible sight. Terrible. I started crying. And then they came, and the first thing they took our horse, our old horse. And we begged them to leave us the horse, which really was saying, no, they say our horses are tired, we have to take. So they took the horse, And I didn't give up, and I ran after them, ran and ran and ran, and came. I counted on that they will stop in the village, and they did. And I found that man with our horse, and I almost kissed his hand, but he didn't. He didn't relent, and he took the horse, and the bees were dispersed. And it was such irony in that, because, we waited for them. Christina is a very, very devout Catholic, and Poles generally are terribly anti-Bolsheviks, anti-Soviet, anti-communists. And yet, she too saw in them savers, liberators. And then it was so ironic, these liberators came spreading this around them somehow. These bees, we were our real lifesavers. And that horse, and somehow they were in ecstasy, they were really euphoric. That was our first meeting, and then more regular things started happening, and then we went back to town. And Christina later moved to a town in Poland, repatriated, because that was, Vilna became again capital of Lithuania under Russian occupation, and they got a chance to be repatriated into Poland. She went to a port town near Danzig, Gdynia, and there she brought up her girl, and then she came here to visit us. Oh yes, we brought her here. Oh, it was fantastic. She came here, but when her girl was killed in traffic accident the day she graduated from medical school. So you see, she had a very tragic history. And we wanted very much, when the girl was killed, we wanted very much Christina to come over here. And we had connection here with the Christian establishment in the old city and so on and so forth. We could let her lead real Christian life here. But she wouldn't. She wanted to be there. The girl was buried there, and her husband was buried there, but of course we had constant contact with her, and we sent her money and parcels and so on. And she always thought that the whole shchuna lives on our parcels. And then we made her Hasidat Umot Haolam, and she got a medal, and she wrote us that medal helps her a lot, because she wears it. She was wearing it. She was a very old lady by that time, and she said that people gave her respect. They didn't know what the medal is for. I think she just had a medal. And she said, for instance, people would let her give her a place in the queue, give up their place for her, and people would help her to carry coal from the basement, and things like that. And then she got sick, and she went to a hospital, and we got letters from her from the hospital. And her last letter was written already by a young priest who was sitting with her when she was dying, and she couldn't write, but she dictated. So he wrote that he wrote that what she is doing in the hospital in her last days, she was explaining all the time to the nurses and the doctors that Jesus was a Jew. That's it. This is the story of Christina, which is, from my point of view, the very, very significant story in my life. Probably the most significant, and the story which in a very important way, I think, laid some foundations for my relations with the world. I think so. Because, of course, the whole thing... I forgot to tell you that our mother was also saved by somebody. And when my mother, who, as I told you, looked very non-Jewish, worked as a waitress in the officers' mess in a small place near Vilna. And she came to visit us one day at Christina's place. Not less, not more. She came to visit us with her Goyish documents, looking like a very, very, very Slavic woman. So she was Jewish, but she was a very beautiful woman. She had ash blonde hair, and she also came to Israel later. She died here in '67, and I came in '40. I lived for a while in Italy, and then in Rome, and then I came over here in '45, '6, just before the War of Independence, and Monica came 2 years later with our mother. Our father was killed. Our father was managing that industry there. They brought German engineers, and my father had to introduce them to this thing. And when they saw that it's all right, they just took him out and killed him. And I went there. I was there a few years ago. And, I went to the factory from Vilna. Somebody took me, and I went around and looking for somebody old who may still remember our father. And I found an old man, kind of foreman or something in the factory. And I said, maybe you remember Blueskin, that was our maiden name. And, oh, he says, of course I remember. He had 2 girls, twins. There were 2 twin sisters. And then this man went with me to the near village where we found our Ozeret, one Ozeret. We found our nurse, an old woman who was a very young girl when she was nurse, really. We were small. I mean, she was with us all the time. And then somebody explained to me how to reach the place. He said that he knows where our father was buried. And I went there and found a collective, how do you call it? A what? Mass grave, right. Mass grave with a date, and saying that so and so many people were buried here on such and such date, and a very, very beautiful monument. Actually, that village, the village near to which that grave was, is village of woodcarvers, and they made a wood statue, a beautiful, very sad wood statue over this, and there is an inscription in Lithuanian and in Yiddish, I think in Yiddish and Lithuanian. I have a photograph of it.
What's the name of it, huh? The name
of the place? Oh yes, I don't remember it now, but I have the name. I have the name and I have the photograph of the place and the grave and so on. And I forgot the name. It's a small village, and then we came here and we became Olim Hadashim. And somehow, it was very hard for me. I didn't like it. I didn't want to come. I didn't want to come. I didn't feel that they would. We didn't belong to any Zionist organization or anything. So I thought I would like, if I can, to go to America after the liberation of Europe. Apropos liberation, I thought I was tempted to say it at the seminar when Professor Offer talked about the discrepancy between official history and what people remember. And it occurred to me suddenly that when people talk about liberation, liberation is a word, it's an abstract word, and try to think not of even you who has not gone through those things, but even me. Think of liberation. I mean, it doesn't tell you anything. But when I think of liberation, my memory is of those Cossacks. So you see how complex it is. It's on one hand, liberation is such a joyful event. It's something you have been waiting for 4 years. Most of the time not believing that it will really come. And then it comes in the form which is so terrible, but yet it was liberation. You can't say it wasn't. So I think I think that it really gives you an example of this discrepancy. What I remember, if you tell me liberation, what was my first moment of liberation was this terrible meeting with those Cossacks, terrible encounter with this wild, terrible people, spreading death as a matter of fact, and really destroying the basis of our life there. On the one hand. On the other hand, they were liberators. Without them, we would die, no doubt about it, by the hand of Germans. So this interplay between official events, the way they are registered by history, and your private memory of the same event is different. And it's so much more colorful, so much more, so often ironic, like in this case, and so messy. It's not neat. The history is neat. It tells you they were liberated then, they were attacked then, they were conquered, they were all these things. But memory is messy, fuzzy. This is the story. I think, look, it took me exactly 1 hour. Sharon.
Well done.
I think it's the first time I'm telling this. You know, when I came here, people were interested. Some people were, not all, but some people were interested. You probably meet a lot of complaint that people didn't listen to us, to the people who came from the camps. Now, think for a moment what a wonderful, actually, what blessings we had, my sister and I. We were never in camps. We were 3 days in this ghetto, and we were never in camps. Not only we were not in camps, we lived not under somebody's floor, like so many people, or in some cave or something. We lived in a house with books, and most important, with loving, courageous, absolutely outstanding person who just did what she thought was her duty to do. She was not sentimental at all. Sometimes she was hard on us. She felt that this is what a good Catholic should do. And this was like she was in school. That's why nobody liked her. People don't like such people. She was not accommodating. She was just absolutely uncompromising with her conscience. Her conscience said that she should do this. With us, with Nikolai. My sister says, but I don't remember that, my sister says that one day there appeared at the farm a young woman, a young Jewish woman, a physician, who heard about Christina from somebody and wanted to stay, and that Christina called us, she asked her to wait and called us, and she said something, Monica said, I don't remember that incident. Maybe it's not, maybe it's not maybe it's not strange that I don't remember it, because if it was like Monica says, it must have been a very difficult thing. Monica says that Christina decided not to take her in, but she called us in and she says, girls, what shall we do, like with Nikolai? And she said, I think I cannot endanger all of us because of her. She's young and she's healthy, she must find something else. That means we didn't take her in. Maybe I repressed. If Monica is right that it happened, and I can't see any reason why she should invent, because it's probably also terrible for her to think about it. If she doesn't invent that, then it must I probably repressed it very hard. I don't remember anything. I don't remember such a thing that somebody came. Monica says somebody came, and Christina called us and talked to us and said that she suggested this time maybe there were some reasons that she thought that this woman can manage, I don't know. But anyhow, she didn't take her in. It probably was terrible for us at that moment. It was a terrible dilemma. Of course, we were so hungry, but still, we did share with Nikolai. Anyhow, so this is the story. Now I deserve some Coca-Cola.
You deserve a lot more than Coke.
You collect witnesses like me.
Mm-hmm.
You're working on what? On your master's, doctorate?
Mm-hmm.
On survivors like me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm very one of the questions that I'm interested in is really about how survivors have felt about being survivors. I mean, when did they first associate or hear about the term survivors? When did they feel like they were survivors or identify with being a survivor?
After the war. First of all, after the war, the first shock was to come back to Vilna and to meet somebody who went to school with us and whose first word was, "Oh, you are alive?" Still. Yes, I am. Imagine, I'm sorry, I am. Oh, it was terrible. And it was not only my experience, I heard it from others. That was terrible. Second, I imagine that for people, we didn't know anything about father. I think later on we found out about what happened to father. I imagine, I don't remember that. But we met our mother soon after liberation, so-called liberation. So we were a very small family. We knew that our aunts and uncles and grandmothers and so on will probably disappeared. But my mother made all kinds of inquiries and so on, but it was hopeless anyhow. But we had this small family. We didn't have any more siblings, and we didn't have many aunts or uncles. So from this point of view, we really didn't have anybody to look for, and I don't remember. I will have to ask Monica. I don't remember whether we met any Jewish survivors, and that probably interests you. But I don't remember. I met my boyfriend from school, and I married him later. But I don't remember. It's completely blotted out. I can't tell you. This is, for instance, one thing. Now that you ask me, I never thought about it. But when you ask me, I can't answer that. I don't remember having met or not met other people. I can only tell you that yesterday. There are, first of all, there are 3 or 4 survivors who were our classmates or who went to schools in parallel schools or something like that. 2 of them a couple live in New York and are still our very, very close friends. They come here, we go there, and when I'm in New York, I live with them always and so on. That means the husband and wife. We met by chance in Italy. We met by chance in Italy. But we came here, my husband and I, and they had a rich father. So he arranged for them to stay and study medicine in Rome, and they reached America already as doctors. I knew about one girl who survived and lived somewhere in Australia, but I never met her. And anyhow, my ties with her we were never friends or anything. And there is one who lives in Haifa, who went to kindergarten with my sister and myself, and who came here in 57, I think it was 57, after a terrible time in camps and whatever, terrible. And she calls me, she calls or comes, and I don't have much in common with her, not because of camps. On the contrary, I listen to all her, she wants very much to talk about it, and I listen to that because it's really worth listening. You know, we age differently, people age differently, even my sister and myself. So, but she called me yesterday, and I told her about my new interest in this Shoah, and that I'm attending a course even on that. You are suddenly turned to a student and attending a course, and she said, and she reminded me